We need to call this meeting to order. We do have a quorum. Please stand with me and say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Alright, I hope you've all had a chance to look at the minutes from last month.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, approved. Let's hear our first case.
All right, thank you. First and only case today is case number MSCD 41-2023. It's the application of Immaculate Conception Catholic Church in the region of Jonathan, Florida. Reason for the request is for installation of a masonry monument sign with a programmable digital LED screen. This site sign will require a variance from the adopted guidelines for the property located at 1901 Madison Street. The property does fall in the Beach Haven Barksdale sub-district, although in this case that's irrelevant because the signage guidelines extend across all the sub-districts. This is a picture just looking into the site where the former sign was, which we have a picture of here in a minute. And then a picture looking at the school that's on the site. This is the sign that was up at the school. The way I understand it, the new sign will go in the exact same spot as the old one. And on the right is the elevation of the proposed signage. Starting at the base, it will have a modular brick base and a running bond pattern with a cast stone cap. The middle portion will be a 3-foot 6-inch programmable LED screen. And then the top portion will be a static, internally illuminated cabinet sign. And then a picture of what that sign will look like. Staff comments: animated, flashing, chasing, running, or sequential signs are not permitted. Light emitting diode or LED signs are prohibited. Monument signs shall not exceed 30 square foot in area, excluding the support structure. This proposal is 41.25 square foot. And then monument signs also may not be more than 5 foot in height. This proposal is 8 foot 4 inches above the finished grade. Further, I'll state that the staff recommends disapproval of this variance. The ordinance does give an allowance to schools, churches, and institutions for marquee type signs, which is similar to the one they had. Which are not afforded to restaurants, retail, things of that nature. So I will answer any questions of the staff if there are any.
Go ahead.
Are there any provisions for using new technology in static marquee type signs? And the LED prohibitedness, is that just a general LED? I mean, if it's a static, like the top part, do we require fluorescent tubes behind it, or LED strips illuminating the sign, allowable in that way?
Right. The top part would require essentially just the back to be blacked out or opaque, turn black at night when lit, and only illuminate the school name, business name, logo.
But an LED source in that is okay?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
I have a question, Madam Chair.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, a statement. I like to ask a question and make a statement. I've seen some lit up signs at other churches on a pole and they light up. How different or is that than this sign?
The lighting could be something different. All signs are allowed to be illuminated, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
It's the manner in which they are. The case before you today will be more of a display video messaging,
Kind of like a TV.
rolling, constantly scrolling, I guess, through different activities at the school and things of that nature. So, and there are some on Madison Street. Those have existed before the guidelines went into, became adopted by the city council. So there are some out there. However, they to my knowledge, were never approved by this board.
I have another.
Yes,
So as far as the size, if it was on if it was the same size sign on a 14-foot, 6-inch tall
Okay.
post, it would be okay as far as it would be under the 50 square feet for the
correct.
signs.
Correct.
And
I see.
that's kind of where I have, if the goal is a more uniform, aesthetically pleasing appearance in the district, I think we can all agree the monument sign is more aesthetically pleasing than if it was on a single pole. Or conversely, they could do the brick and just hack out the middle of it and it'd be on 2 columns and still be a freestanding sign.
Correct, and the staff is okay with the size variance portion. It's the digital message board that is prohibited, and the staff would be against.
Madam Chair, why are we against the digital?
I guess to put it simply, you know, when the ordinance came into being, it was put in the ordinance. The city council adopted it at that time. It was a group of 10 to 20 stakeholders in the Madison Street area that, through a Leadership Clarksville project, I think, spurred these guidelines, held community meetings. It went through the process of getting public opinion, and they were put in the guidelines, I think, for a reason. So,
And this doesn't fall under the marquee type signs for announcements of activities taking place at locations, with the exceptions of churches, schools, and institutions.
I've always understood that as kind of the old take the letters out there, put them up. That they are allowed, typically schools, churches, things of that nature, are places for emergency or to display messaging. So I think that's why they were given that allowance to begin with. But I've always been under the impression that the marquee is more the old school, putting the letters up, changing the messaging that way instead of the digital.
Mr. Gannon?
I'm kind of like everybody else. I don't understand why we're against LED and would rather have a static illuminated light. I just think it looks a whole lot nicer, and I agree with what everybody said here so far. You mentioned that there was a study done and it was put in the provisions or in the document. When was that? How old is that provision when they did the study and all that? When was it adopted?
Probably closer to 15 years. I
That was
guess.
15 years ago?
Right.
Okay, about 15 years, odd years
I
ago.
was pretty new here, I think, when it.
And I take it
Kinda
for
good.
granted at that time, pretty everything else was probably the static signs where you put the stuff up there, and that's probably why they went against that.
No, actually,
LED.
so you've got the signs that predate the time. Sonic is one that comes to mind. I think it was specifically mentioned at that point in time that they didn't want those type of signs along the corridor. At the time of this adoption, I worked at the coach department, was heavily involved in sign permitting. So, that was one of the things that was discussed about how that came about. So, I think multiple reasons. They are considered a nuisance to some people. They're a distraction to people driving. If
Yeah.
you're driving and there's full motion video going on next to you, they distract from your
Driving.
process of driving.
Will
We
we
gotta get the phone out of their hand first so they can see the sign.
Mr. Jones?
So there's a couple of financial institutions that have what I'd call like a static, because I've been paying attention
Sign
to.
is permitted. It's specifically listed as permitted, as well as gas stations. And I know when they originally wrote the gas station standard, it wasn't cycling like it is now, where the prices constantly go up. But at that point in time, that technology was available, and it was discussed. They allowed it for gas stations and time and temperature situations.
Right, the one I'm thinking of is, advertising a percentage rate on a CD,
Those would
but
be-
it's static. I mean, what is changing? Like if they just had something up, Fall Festival that was up that week, and then it changed to something the next week, that's the stuff, sorry,
tell you
that's
there's a-
something that's flashing back and forth.
There's a clause in the regulations, if you go into the details of it, that specifically state when it references signage, it's supposed to be for the purpose only of identification of the business. So, things like Coca-Cola packs 2 for $10 or whatever the case may be, regardless if they're static or not, or the rates at a bank, those would be viewed more as advertising than they would be as an identification source.
Right, and I'm just saying because, and I think those signs predate this district. But I was just kind of going back to the marquee dispensation specifically allowed for schools and churches.
To my knowledge, there's been no new signs put up for LED message boards, with the exception of the gas and water facility, and they're exempt from the regulations of their own. So-
And they did not contact us before, or we would have
I
strongly
forgot about that one.
recommended against it.
So,
Okay. Marcia?
Now, does Barksdale, across the street, Barksdale Elementary, have a digital sign?
They may very well, but they would fall under an exemption of
School.
regulations. Yeah, they're a
Okay.
government
If it's in this
facility.
picture.
But I thought they had put one up, it hadn't been up there that terribly long either. And I think in our beginning, we wanted to reduce the eye clutter along Madison Street, the corridor, so that was the intent.
Right.
Mr. Shepherd?
so if this is against the guidelines and we approve it, shouldn't we change the guidelines?
Are you asking me that question? or- What I can normally tell you is we have a responsibility here as planning commission employees, when we're charged with enforcing a regulation that's on the books. It's been voted on through a political process at the city council. It's not our right to go and say, we don't think it should be followed. And you all are serving as a board that's meant to interpret and enforce these
Enforce law.
regulations as well. So in order to approve a variance, there should be a very special exemption as to what requires it, because the higher legislative body has already decided this case. So in reference to your question, if the board wishes to approve these type of things, then the better process would be to open the guidelines as a whole, take public comments, go back through the process, and then present that argument to city council to say that we want to make these type of signs permitted. And then the regulation would stand for all parties, not just a special exemption or a case that's being considered. So, what we can say is we've heard this on other things like painting brick. Should we clarify that more? This would be one of those things that I would catalog in that. I think it's also an important time to state that acceptance of these applications and presenting them to you all is not an endorsement or a recommendation. You heard the staff's recommendation is actually against this, but we have to process applications and bring them to you to hear. So, whether they have merit or not, but that's what I would tell you.
Will we hear
Mr.
from
Smith.
the,
Mr. Smith?
I think we have to look, and we've run into this in probably the past year. We've looked at the guidelines, and the guidelines, maybe we need to go to the city council, whoever starts that process, and say, we need to look at this stuff. Technology's changed, the LED, and let's take a second look at these things, because Clarksville's changing, and these guidelines probably need to be tweaked, because things that we're disapproving or approving, whether they're by the guidelines or not, are if we approve this, and you open the door, and it's going to be real hard to shut it, and so I think that's an issue, and I think we really need to look at the guidelines as a whole, and if it has to go to whoever starts that process, I think that process needs to move forward.
Okay. Mr. Jones?
will we hear from the applicant?
The agent is here, and I'm assuming some representatives of the school as well.
Okay. No more questions? All right. If there's someone in favor of this case, could you come forward and state your name and address?
Hi, my name is John Clark. I'm a local architect. Some of you know me, some of you do not. My address is 55 North First Street, Suites 300, right downtown, right across from City Hall. I've worked with the Catholics for years, worked with a lot of churches, a lot of institutions, done a lot of architecture around here. You're right, technology's changed. However, we are in a situation where we've got a set of guidelines that are in place. We don't use any fluorescent lighting of any kind anymore. Doug, you know that. Everything is LED. The intent of Immaculate Conception is not to have streaming lights. This is not like a Las Vegas scenario. This would simply be static. It would be informative. Basketball game tonight, 6 p.m. That would be it. I do think, because I did grow up here and I have seen it, I do understand government. And government can do a lot of things that I cannot. Most of you cannot. However, you know, when you look at the gas and water sign, drive out there tonight. Go check it out. It's huge. It's much larger than this by a long shot. Is it LED? Absolutely. Is it programmable? Absolutely. Same thing goes for the school system. I haven't really taken a close look at that, but I do know that there's been some things that Madison Street Corridor has accepted in the past, and I think we should look forward in the future to doing some things, because Clarksville is dynamically changing. These signs are in a large majority of the United States and metropolitan areas. I know because I work all over the country. They're not invasive. The intent, again, is more static, not streaming. We don't want to do anything that's going to take away from a driver's visibility perspective and have a wreck. I think it's off the road enough to where it would be okay. I think it's assembled and designed correctly. Might be a little bit over the size requirements there, but not terribly. But a nice low masonry sign with a little bit of lighting on it. We're just asking for, you know, just maybe a possible exception here. I get where you're coming from, and I understand the law. But I do think that this should be looked at long range, because I was a Leadership Clarksville graduate, class of '05, long time ago. And things that were done, you know, 15 years ago just don't even exist anymore. Take, for example, your telephone. Things that just have gone from flip phone analogs to now just almost basically having a supercomputer in your hands. And yeah, it bothers me driving down the road and seeing everybody on their phone while they're driving. But I'd be happy to answer any other questions you may have. I just would appreciate your support. Thank you.
Anyone on the board have questions? Mr. Gannon?
I'll follow up on what Mr. Jones was saying there too. We talked about the size of it. If you put a kind of a pole in the middle and then put 2 columns over here on the side, you take away a lot of the stuff that they're disagreeing with, I think is what you mentioned.
Well, I think what Brent said is their principal objection's not size.
It's not the size,
Yeah,
yeah.
I mean, because you could, like I said, you could
the
hack out
drawing.
the middle of the brick and have 2 columns, and it'd be well under the limit for a freestanding sign.
It's the streaming ability.
It's
Yeah.
the video.
It's the
yeah.
streaming ability of having possible video animations on that sign, on that screen.
Distract the driver.
Mr.
And that
Crosby?
would be nothing that they would have.
And I think that was my question, where here the staff comment said, animated flashing, chasing, running, or sequential signs are not permitted. So there would be no animation, flashing, chasing, or running, or sequentially part of that sign.
No. If you approve this today, there would be absolutely none of that. And if by any reason that one of you were happen to drive by this sign and see it flashing, you could simply say in your order of recommendation that if this was ever seen as streaming or anything of the liking, then the sign could be demolished, which that'd be a pretty hard penalty. But it's static. It would be static.
So,
Any other questions
I
on the
have a
board?
question, Madam
Yes,
Chair.
ma'am.
Thank you. So can you kind of give a detail as to the possible way your sign will be set up? It's not a video, or how is it going to put a display?
Let me show you.
Yeah, please, thank you.
I took this at a similar little school up in Kentucky the other day.
Mm-hmm.
It's a little, and I'll just show you this. You guys can pass my phone around. But it's
Mm-hmm.
a Grace Christian Academy, and this is the sign on it. It's next to a little park called Yellow Creek
Come
Park.
close to me for a minute,
And it
please.
just shows like the time of day.
Oh, okay. So yours is gonna be
or the
like
day,
that?
Or it could
Similar.
say, join us for worship, 9 a.m.
Mm-hmm.
That's the type of static information we're talking about here.
think the key word is static, that we're
Static.
missing. It's
Static.
not gonna be streaming.
Correct.
It's static.
Well, what I can say is that is mentioned in there about but it also outright prohibits LED signs.
Yeah.
And there was clarification at the point in time because they went as far to explain what static
Thank you,
messages
sir.
were permitted. Time and temperature and gas prices. If we thought this met the regulations, you all would not be seeing this today. We would have already issued the bill, or the permit for the release. So what's to be considered is whether or not you choose to ignore the requirements and grant a variance, which I don't think there's criteria to grant a variance. What I would entertain is if you think you want to allow LED signs as a whole, whether static or streaming or whatever the case may be, the proper protocol would be to open it up to all parties for that consideration. I would anticipate if you choose to vote and approve this one today, we get this question all the time from Publix, the gas stations, all the others that want these signs. So you would see multiple requests for the same items. So,
But this is a school,
Yes.
and schools did fall under a different category, correct?
whether that's completely legal or not, yes, but they are listed,
Yeah, in our guidelines,
yes.
yes.
That was kind of my question. If we granted a variance for an LED static marquee specifically for the school church exception, wouldn't that limit fast food?
It's not
Other,
gonna limit anybody from applying.
well, not from applying, but it wouldn't set a precedent that we would allow it for everybody if we tailored it to a
Clause here is-
specific.
Yeah, the clause that's listed is LED signs are prohibited, so.
Well, and that was my first question of the day is, if LED signs are prohibited, we probably shouldn't approve any sign because the illumination source is all LED, whether it's exposed or concealed. That's not what it says. It says LEDs prohibited.
You can't even buy,
That was my
LED is
point.
what you're gonna buy today, that's
Yeah.
it.
What signs have we approved that are
I
LED?
don't know. I don't
To my knowledge, probably only gas stations.
So they came, I mean, they went in front of,
Yeah, like the Kroger's gas supply, I think, came through about a year and a half ago. It has an LED gas
digital
price.
price.
But I'm talking about, I'm sorry.
And I'm well aware of what the light source is and the technology.
Right, but I guess,
that
but the
exists.
way
The reason that portion is in there, I sit in when they wrote the guidelines, so the interpretation and the intent
Well, we need to change
was
the
like the
guidelines.
signs.
That's what we need to
Like
do.
the
I
example
think we
that was
postpone
granted.
this.
Well, we need to
As
change
the
the
example
Yeah.
of LED, changeable copy. And to go as far as if they felt that LED didn't apply to churches and whatnot, they would have applied that exemption at that point in time for the marquees to be
To us.
that. And they chose not to. Now,
Yeah.
I'm not saying that they don't make a good argument, I'm just telling you what the guidelines currently state. And our preference from the staff is if there's a wish to change that, we change it as a whole and not start granting variances to what the guidelines say is prohibited.
Mr. Singletary?
How long would it take us to change the guidelines?
2 readings at city council, ultimately. I think what we would ask as a staff is, multiple of these guidelines have been considered for, either archaic, as some have mentioned, or things are dynamic and changing, that we would, if we're going to change the guidelines, we look at changing guidelines as a whole. Now, what you run into is what staff time is available, and we're in the midst of a comprehensive plan and trying to get that passed. And in some cases, this may be a better job considered for a consultant, and maybe money need to be appropriated from the city council to accomplish that. But to change one line in a process, 3 months, so.
I just
So
want
do
to
you
make a
plan on
comment.
putting it up?
I just really don't think we need to change the guidelines.
What's that, Mr.
I don't think
Singletary?
that's what the intent of our board is. When our board was first set up, the intent was to reduce the eye clutter along Madison Street, meaning all the running flashing lights we didn't want. So if we open up and go back to the drawing board and say, okay, let's have those streaming signs along Madison Street, we're gonna defeat what we started for. So I just think the intent for churches and schools that were exempt or okay under our guidelines, I think we just have to look at each individual case. I don't think we need to go back to the drawing board.
I think that from what I recall, and I don't have the notes from that period of time, that creating exemptions did result in a lot of conversation. The term that was used is they're considered as places of refuge. And in the event of something happened major, they wanted to be able to provide messages to the community that taking that exemption out and saying no marquees anywhere would have limited the people on Madison Street from other opportunities that the community had. So the thought process is we list this here, and in the event that there's something major that occurs, you could identify through schools and churches that something is occurring, whether it's a place to stay when it's below freezing, or whatever the case may be, a food drive or something of that nature, is why the exemption was created, from what I recall. So,
Are we not gonna put ourselves in a predicament if we disapprove this but approve another school asking for the same thing, or vice versa? If we approve this and some other school or church comes in and asks for approval and we vote that down, isn't that, are we speaking out of both sides of our mouth or what?
I personally would have to see the case that we would disapprove. Because I'm leaning towards favor on this one, but I would have to see the one that would cause us to disapprove it. I don't know that we would disapprove another one or approve it. I'm not saying that, but you would, depending on the situations, you could put yourself in a predicament, but maybe not. It depends on the case and where it is and stuff, I would think.
Mr. Jones?
I mean, I go back to the goal of the sign design standard and guidelines to encourage a more uniform and aesthetically pleasing appearance on Madison Street. I think a static marquee, regardless of the light source, is more aesthetically pleasing than the little letters that blow off and are changeable. Because we're saying that if we took out the LED, it could be a big white box with the changeable black letters on it. And that would meet the intent of the guidelines.
Mr. Smith?
I just think that, you see these signs in town, you see, the street department and other signs. There's no way that you're gonna tell this organization that this sign has certain parameters. You can't do this on this sign. When you tell them it's gonna be static, that's not gonna work. Because they're gonna find out the capabilities of the sign and wanna push it and want that sign to do more.
Then what I would suggest is what I suggested earlier, that case-by-case basis, based upon this church and school function, if anybody were to see anything streaming or anything of the liking, you could put that into this approval. You could put as much as to seriously demolish the sign if it were ever seen. It's a static, I've been told it's a static sign, it's gonna be a static sign.
I just think at that point, you put the cart before the horse. I mean,
We've talked about the lack of enforcement previously, that if we do something like that post, we have no ability to do the enforcement, so I can't see getting there.
And I would like to say something. I would just add that I don't think we need to always have to change the law just to please a certain person or a group or something like that. And I understand that times are changing, but I understand the reason behind the 10 to 20 stakeholders who came together, some of the citizens there, and their reasons for making these stipulations, or on the signs. And one that I heard is wrecks, listening to people reading the signs and they can cause wreck. I'm not against this because I love what churches do. It's my heart. My thing is this: is there any other way you can fix the sign without us having to have it like that, without us happen to disapprove this? I don't want to disapprove it, but I wanted to see it go forth. Is there any other way you can fix the sign that it can still do what you want it to do?
I'm not really sure, Ms. Smith. The way it was explained to me originally was to basically have, you know, a static, have it programmable, but be able to call attention to it like it was a basketball game this Friday night, 6
Right, I
p.m.
understand.
You know, that was how it was explained to me in the process. Now, you know, you're gonna buy, and most people that are gonna buy, if they're gonna buy a static backlit sign, then, you know, if it, let's say it was gonna say welcome on it, like that particular rendering right there we did, then that would be it. But they wanted to be able to provide some level of static announcement. And, you know, I heard the comment talking about, you know, when it does get cold and you've got a warming shelter.
Right.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, you know, I won't speak out of turn here, but that sign might save somebody's life if they knew that this church and school was gonna have a
Be
warming
open.
shelter. Seriously.
Hmm.
And I don't think it's anything against Madison Street corridor. I think that sign would be welcome to Madison Street corridor. There's a lot of other places in Clarksville that deserve a whole lot more improvement that don't have a governing body over them, such as you guys. I drive by them all the time. I see all the development going on.
Thank you.
Okay?
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Is there anyone here who would like to speak against?
In favor. You still got any more?
Oh, we got any more in favor? Oh, okay. All right.
Julie Runyon, address 1400 Madison Street, Clarksville, Tennessee. So obviously I live and work on the Madison Street corridor. My daughter attends school at ICS. I'm here representing the donor of the funds that have made this sign possible. It's not cheap. It's a substantial amount of money for a small school such as ours that's subsidized by the church. If you can go back to the previous of what the existing sign looks like and what we are proposing, huge improvement aesthetically. Again, it could say have a Bible verse or whatnot, but your distraction to looking at this, if it's able to be changed, it's difficult to change. Sometimes the message may be up there for a year, or letters fall off, but certainly our intent is not to distract drivers. It is to obviously benefit the school, make the front more aesthetically appealing. Again, I think it's a huge improvement for the Madison Street corridor. What did I miss, John? But again, as a resident of the street, a parent of a student, and representing the donor, we would encourage you to consider approving it. We're almost, 2 years due to internal and external that these funds have been on hold, and we can't continue to keep them on hold. But this is a project that we would like to see happen. So.
Wanda?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for sharing your thoughts, Ms. Runyon. I know that a sign can inform, and what he says that here, for businesses, we can only identify the business with signs. My thing to you, how have you been getting out messages to the students' parents or to whoever you want to get out? Is this the only way you get a message out, or do you send it through email? How have you been doing this while you had that sign up there?
Well, that sign occasionally has messages, probably less and less, because it's not practical to change due to the height.
I understand.
Internally, there's email, there's
Right.
Facebook, there's all the traditional, or
Right.
what we're now considering traditional means of communication. What I see the sign, and sorry, I wasn't prepared to really speak, but what I see the sign to be is a communication with the community, to shed light more on our school to the community, people that may be passing by or that we don't have that direct means of communication with. So whether that's somebody that didn't know that there was a craft fair that was being hosted on Saturday, or thank you for someone who just sponsored an event. That's recognition, advertisement, such as that.
How long has school been open?
School has been 23 years. And like I said, my son attended most of his elementary and his last middle school year there. He's now at Pope. My daughter's there, finishing up 8th grade. She's been there that time. This is something that obviously my family feels like is needed for the school. Those funds could be put somewhere else, but this is something that, as far as people recognizing that it is a school there and getting the name out for those purposes, and just, again, a general improvement to the front of the school.
And you do realize we're here to enforce the laws.
I do.
You do know that.
I do.
And if we vote this down, it's not against you all, not against the school.
Sure.
But we just want to follow the guidelines that we have before us. And, and if it's approved, it's either way it goes, we just hope that, you don't take this personally, but we just have to
I would
follow
not
the
take it
rules.
personally. I just would like to say that I don't think it's any more distracting than those multicolor lights on the car wash across the street from Publix that just got
Yeah.
put in. So, yeah, I don't know if anybody's noticed those.
I have.
Mr.
Thank you.
Jones.
I do have a follow-up. Brent, when I asked the question about the change, no, that photo's fine. About the changeable letters on a white box. And I asked if that's acceptable. Is that not an illuminated plastic box sign?
I would consider that a marquee type sign.
Okay.
I guess applied, I would ask at that time, will it be illuminated, and kind of go from there. Ideally, in a sign like that, the blue portion would, become opaque. The light wouldn't shine through that, and it'd just light up the name of the school.
Okay. Thank you.
Oh, no,
Any more questions? All right, have we got anyone opposed who would like to speak? Mr. Williams?
Closed, okay.
Hi, I'm Chris Williams. I'm kind of doing a double role here today. I work for the City of Clarksville Building Codes Department, and I'm also on the board. I'm a trustee for Hilldale United Methodist Church. And we've all always wanted a digital sign, LED sign, changeable sign. And in the past, we've told them it's not permissible. I think this board has to uphold the regulations that's putting forth in front of them. And I think you got to ask yourself, do we want Madison Street to be a Wilma Rudolph Boulevard? And I hope you would not want that down Madison Street. But like I said, I'm not against this, but I think if I was on this board, I would ask you to table it. If you think it needs to be changed, send it back to City Council to be changed.
All right.
I have
Any
a question for
questions?
Chris. I
Ms.
have a
Smith?
question. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, thank you for coming up, Chris. Good to see you.
Nice seeing you, Miss Smith.
You too. Did we approve a sign for your church? I know you said y'all wanted
No,
one.
we were.
Never came
no,
forth?
when I inquired about it, it
Oh,
was
it
no,
was
it's
no.
against guideline.
Oh, okay.
So we left it at that. So I think we got a big problem with signs in Clarksville. We're here, there, we're all over the board. When the big billboard come up for Austin P, right down here on College Street, yeah, they're exempt, they're government,
Oh, yeah, right.
but we're going to advertise ball games, events. Now it's turned into a moneymaker. You got Kevin Kennedy on there. You got realtors on there. And I know you say, you can hold this digital sign to different statements. That's true for today. That's true for next month. But what happens down the road when the principle changes and when it's all gone inside? It's going to change. So once again, please understand, I'm not opposed to it. I just think we need to get a hold of these guidelines on these signs, and I would ask the board to table it, send it back to City Council, let them figure it out. We like the old saying is, my grandfather, you get on the pot or you get off of it. Thank y'all for listening.
Okay. Any other questions, statements? All right. Are we ready for,
I'd like to make a motion
okay, motion?
that we,
Can I interrupt you?
yes, sir.
The advice that I would give you, it's obvious that some are in favor, some are opposed. If you're gonna make a recommendation for, be very specific as to what the details of your
Well, they need to
recommendation
write
are,
that
so
out.
that everybody is
We just need to
prepared.
postpone it
If
right
it
now.
passes for enforcement or any of those other items.
Did you need to speak?
I just have an observation.
He needs to come back to the
You
podium.
need to come up
Give
here
it
and tell us who you are.
You understand?
Hmm?
You understand?
I was not prepared to talk. My name is Dave Hartnett. I live at 3512 Springhouse Trail in Clarksville, Tennessee. As a graphic designer for over 40 years, I think one observation, since sitting way back, seen from the store, one observation, the dramatic difference between the sign that's been there for years, name of the school is Provident. It's taken more than 2/3. And then there's a little message. What I'm seeing being proposed is the name of the school and then a big message sign, big area. So the question is it the intent of the sign to basic signature or give signage to this is where the major point of the sign is this is where the school is. That's the original intent for signage. And then we have a message that could say Merry Christmas. So is it the portion of the message that's the problem? So in regards to advertising, you could say simple like a psalm or an event, but the dominant issue of the sign is to identify the property. This is where, for drivers, this is where the location is. That's the initial intention of signage. And then secondary, what is your brand, or what are you selling, or what's the message? So the question of yeah, I think we have a lot of, how we present that, yes, I have moved those, those little individual plastic signs that are pain in the butt, weather. But again, it's, what is the intent for visibility? And again, distractive driving, and again, I'm sitting way back there, like if I was a driver down the road, what did I catch my eye? The message that's big, or the name of the school? What is the intent, or what is the purpose of the sign? And that could be for any business or for any organization. That's just, again, an observation. Food of thought. That's all I have.
Thank you.
Okay.
All
That's
right, you ready?
Yeah. And it's not, we don't table it, because you table it, you gotta bring it back off the table. I'd like to make a motion that we postpone this for 90 days. See if Mr. Clark can work out something here, and/or go to the city council maybe to continue this. If it doesn't happen in 90 days, then it's still a provision, if it's taking city council a little longer, to postpone it maybe another 30 to 60 days, in the event that city council hasn't brought it up yet. But at this time, postpone it for 90 days, which would be our February meeting, correct? Or would you rather be the March meeting?
Let's do, are you okay if I speak out of turn? I think March is partly more appropriate, and then, so here's how this would have to take. It sounds like you're wanting to table this.
Postpone it, not table.
Or postpone
Yeah.
it for a period of time, for consideration of a change to the regulations to go to city council.
Or to work out some kind of thing to where they come in compliance with staff, that staff wouldn't have it. It can be a two-edged sword.
Okay, the second part of that, so that you understand.
You're against LED lights, I got it.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm not, my personal opinions don't weigh in here.
Well, the regs are, I'm not you.
The board would have to vote to initiate that change through the planning commission to consider that change to move forward.
That's right.
So I can't just do it as a staff, so.
Does this motion consider
No, we have-
that initiation for the staff to do that?
You can write it as that, or you can state it as that if you'd like.
And I'd like to state that into the motion then.
Second.
Second, okay.
So does everybody understand what?
Yeah, I think so.
That we're
Postpone
postponing
this
it.
for 90 days, and if the vote
And it
is
has to go back
affirmative
to
for
you.
this,
Yeah.
then we will take the consideration to the planning commission
March.
to consider a change in the regulations related to LED signs.
Right.
To March, to the March meeting. Correct? March meeting,
Yes.
not 90 days. You said March.
meeting.
Yeah.
Can I add a clarification, just to
Absolutely. I'll accept it.
kind of, I think what you're talking about is to allow, I'll say digital, because as soon as we say LED, we'll have a new light source in 6 months. Digital, static, marquee signs added to section 1.3.7 for the listed exceptions of,
Layman's terms, how that I would approach that is, it sounds like you want to consider the same exemption they have for time and temperature or gas prices, that would apply to churches and schools under that format aside.
yeah.
I'll accept that.
And that would solve the problem of other churches who've not applied for a variance that maybe wanted something.
Does my second accept that as well?
Yes.
So,
Okay,
Call for questions.
all right, now, questions?
Yeah, I've got one question. You say static. If you're gonna have an LED programmable display, it's not static. So you're gonna have to fine tune that.
No streaming, no jumping.
That's what I'm getting at.
Okay, Mr. Jones?
Not changeable more than once a day.
I mean, I can live with that.
Okay.
But, I mean, if you're gonna spend
Yeah.
X number of dollars on a programmable LED sign, you're gonna wanna change it. You're gonna wanna get that information out there, so.
If I can't, go ahead and take her question.
Ms. Williams?
So are we, will this take it back to the city council
No, we
and
take-
say,
It will take it to the planning commission,
Planning
which
commission.
could then forward it to the city
and
council.
open it up to allow LED streaming lights along Madison Street?
So that was.
Digital sign.
Digital,
That's what we're doing though, right?
So.
for schools and churches.
When
But I
his-
think we tried to narrow it to the specific exemption of 1.3.7.
And I understand both of your concerns, so I'm gonna answer it in this standpoint. Once we send this item, or any item, to the city council,
They do
it
that.
opens the door to be changed to however they wanna change it. As with any ordinance amendment, or, so, just for full clarification, I understand your concern, I know what your intent is, I know what your concern is. So from approaching it from a planner standpoint, we would have to define what the word static is. The sign that was up there looked like it was multiple colors. Is it intent to be just a black and green LED, or is it full color permitted? So all these things would have to be considered when you start talking with signs. And ultimately, the final decision that will be rendered and put into this regulation will be what the city council as a majority decides. Not necessarily what recommended by this board. So,
Ms. Smith?
Thank you. So who's gonna write up the proposal? So what we're doing now, we're postponing this so we can send it back to you all, the planning commission. Then y'all are going to tweak this, based upon what you think is good and, for the city or the community. And then you all will bring it to the city council, and then we will elaborate on that and decide what we think is good.
yeah.
Okay.
Take your word elaborate, I'm thinking that is whatever council
Right,
members
that's what
want to
we
make
do.
changes or
Discuss, we
elaborate,
would discuss
discuss
it.
and amend further, would be up for
Elaborate. Yeah,
consideration.
Or it
all
could
right,
be left
that's how it works. So
completely
that's what I would vote
Or
on.
could, like,
that.
Commissioner Gannon said, it could be left entirely alone.
Right.
Yeah,
Could
it
take it
could
in.
be. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So we've already seconded this.
So do you want to restate the motion? Sure.
Postpone and sending it back to the
You want to
planning
make it?
commission.
I can restate it.
Restate it.
He wants to postpone the consideration of this specific application to Catholic Church until the March meeting.
Correct.
In doing so, he'd also like the planning commission to consider a proposal to send to city council
right.
to review LED signage as specific relates to schools.
Digital, not LED. Digital rather than
Digital
LED?
LED, will further clarify based on the
Okay.
technology change.
Programmable.
For schools and
Churches.
churches, but with the understanding of this board, that's what the statement is. Further define what static is, but we'll be left to enforce what the city council leaves as the final
Right.
decision.
And change sign once a day, if at the most.
I would,
Or not.
my advice is,
Leave
I
that out.
understand, we've got multiple opinions
Can
of
get
what
some.
static is. In the
And
sign
height.
regulations, some people consider static once per hour, some consider it once per 12 hours, some are once per day. Because that's so controversial across the board, I'll go with your intent of once per day,
Yeah.
but that number is likely to change if they make an amendment.
That's fine.
So,
That's fine.
Okay.
Anything can change, we understand that. Whether it comes to the commission or the council, then we can change and add.
All
I'm
right.
comfortable with what y'all's intent is.
So we have a motion and we have a second.
Any other discussion?
Any other discussion? Okay, we're ready for a vote? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
One, okay. So the Motion has carried.
It's a-
There are no other cases. Do we have any public, oh, we do?
Just one other zoning case we have coming up this month, Z64-2023, the application of Robert Wheeler. Request is to go from R1 to O1 to C2. It's on the Madison Street corridor. This is a zoomed-in map here. A little further out, you have Madison and Crossland, and then a picture here. It's a site on the right going toward Nashville, right before you get to the Lowe's there. Some steep land. To my knowledge, I think it's being deferred this month. Is that official? Or?
Well, we're awaiting a traffic assessment. Because of the short month, we may consider it with big consideration that this is listed in the residential sub-district. It's currently has an O1 zoning classification of commercial, and because it's different than what the sub-district's listed in the map, we wanted to give everyone a comment if the board wanted to make a consideration either for or against the C2. Which, for those that don't know, C2 zoning allows for retail and a mixture of multifamily or standalone multifamily. So it's more about information. If you want to make a motion, you can. If nobody has any concerns they want to list, then we're content moving forward with the way we currently do. It is in your district, and we wanted you to be aware.
What's going there?
They stated a retail center. If it does get changed to C2, it could just be apartments or a mixture of apartments and retail.
Are they gonna build the land up and all that?
That has not been considered at this point, so this would be strictly a
Is that
change of
that
land
blue?
use.
So R101 does what?
Portion, only a small sliver of this land is R1. It's currently primarily O1. Office.
Right.
R1's residential though.
R1 is residential, and it's just really a small sliver of it being O1. They can, or R1.
Okay.
So it also connects to Mary Jo Dozier Boulevard?
It has frontage on both. Do you have all the pictures?
I only took the
Okay.
one of the side.
The back, so it's, when you go to the Crossland Avenue side, it's much higher in elevation and extremely difficult to access there. So I would anticipate some level of grading, but where the finished floor would be considered at this point, or I'll just say finished floors because of how they terrace it, I don't know that as of yet. And we don't normally know that under zoning cases.
Mr. Shepherd?
Looking at this picture, how far towards that traffic light does it go past through the old Darden family home?
I don't know where the old Darden family home is.
It's a driveway that the house is not there anymore.
It gets roughly to the corner property that has the billboard on it.
Okay, so it
There's no
includes that.
substantial difference distance.
That's a big tract of land.
That sure is.
Okay.
It's not that big.
Is that it?
No, it's not that big. Oh, okay.
All right.
Public comment.
Public comments? No? Okay.
I'll just state real quick, next meeting is December 18th.
All right. Motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
All in favor?
Aye.
Adjourn.